Grayson Grundhoefer, SicEm365.com and 365 Sports joins us on this afternoon, the show right here. And we have Grayson on Fridays at around 3:45. Grayson, thank you for your time. In your opinion, what is a malaise of a football program at this particular time? And the wins, not many of them, and a lot of losses. If they lose to Houston tomorrow, what happens with Baylor?
I mean, I think it's pretty much the same situation that they've been in. And I mean, simply put, I think the more that you kind of look at these things and the more that you kind of take a step back and you look at kind of how the season has gone in general, I think we're kind of at that point where it's like, does a win really matter and does a loss really matter? You know what I mean? Because it's kind of one of those things where, yes, there's still a possibility of making a bowl game, but I think everyone is kind of at a point now where they're trying to figure out what's next. And if that what's next step is not momentum, then what is it? You know, where can you find confidence in the football program in general going forward? Now, I think a win does matter. I've always believed that wins do matter. It doesn't matter how you get them. It matters how many you get. But at this point for Baylor, it's just about getting confidence and finding that next direction as a team and as a program as you build towards the end of this season and into next season, if they do, in fact, miss out on making a bowl game.
Well, Grayson, the next two of the next three are their opportunity to, kind of get back on track and have a shot at the end of the year when they play West Virginia. If you don't beat Houston and a flailing TCU, then, we kind of know who they are. I mean, we kind of know who they are anyway, but I don't know if you can't get up for maybe trying to save the season, I don't know what you can get up for.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And that's a great way of putting it. It's just a matter of, does Baylor have, I hate saying does Baylor have the horses to do it, because I do believe they have the talent to do it. It very much seems like throughout this season, they've had points where you look at them and go, man, they should be able to win this game, like Iowa State last weekend. And then they just kind of lay an egg. And, they've had 8 home games this year and have not taken, or they're going to have 8 home games in total, and they haven't taken advantage of it at all, as they're 1-5 on the season at home, which is completely unacceptable in a year where you get 8 home games. You got to take advantage of that. They have not. But you're right. I mean, they get an opportunity this weekend against the worst team, in my opinion, on their schedule in Houston. You get them at home, a chance to, get your fans excited. You got to go out and take advantage of that opportunity. And you're right. TCU is down this year. They just lost to Texas Tech last night. So you have a real opportunity to at least compete with a team that has definitely had Baylor's number over the last, 10 years, really.
All right, so Keytron Jackson's probably not going to play just based on the head injury last week. That's the assumption, at least. If he does, in fact, not play, you've always got Monterey Baldwin, as we know. But who in the world, Grayson, is going to eventually step up at wide receiver? Jackson was just starting to and immediately gets hurt. So who is the guy? I mean, it feels like, I think one of the more frustrating things is it's one thing when you're young, but we got to see some development, right? And at some point, like, Josh Cameron or whoever, I mean, these guys need to start stepping up. So who do you think a good candidate for that could be coming up this weekend?
I mean, I think Josh Cameron has to be continuing to do what he's done throughout really the last 2 years, which is just be a steadying presence for them. I don't think you're going to see him go out there and have, a huge explosion of a game, but he's got to be able to catch contested catches, be able to make those plays, get first downs for this team. That's going to be really important. But I think, kind of the answer that you're probably looking for is who's going to provide maybe a spark or some juice to this passing offense without Keytron, even more so than Josh has done. And I think the two guys that you have to look at, in my eyes, are probably Jordan Neighbors, who's been playing running back and then motioning into the wide receiver position as well. I think he could add some explosiveness there. And then, of course, Armani Winfield, the former 4-star prospect who everyone was super excited about when he committed to Baylor, but he hasn't really had the opportunity to really excel, but I don't think he's gone out and really taken that role. And so now that he's getting an opportunity to prove himself and show what he can do, is he going to be able to take advantage of that opportunity? But I think those two guys are going to be the two focal points to adding explosiveness. And then you just need Josh Cameron to kind of continue doing what he's been doing, along with, of course, the tight ends, who I think will be utilized pretty heavily in this matchup.
So these are young men. They're on scholarship. They're good kids, good young men. But if you're a wide receiver in the last couple of years at Baylor and you haven't pushed through to have a chance or have not found a way to get more receptions or playing time? What does that say?
I think that it's one of those situations where you probably haven't developed completely as a player. And I think that whether that's from a blocking standpoint, a physicality standpoint, a route running standpoint, or catching the football, those four things seem to be really important to this Baylor offense. And when you watch them play, it's pretty evident. When you watch Josh Cameron play, he blocks people, he's extremely physical, and he catches the football. And so when you're doing three things like that, it's hard to take him off the field for even a guy who maybe has more talent, but isn't quite living up to those expectations. So, Armani's going to get his shot this week, and he's going to have to take advantage of that. And if he does, then I think he could carve out a role going into next year, alongside Hal Presley and Ketron Jackson and, of course, Monterey Baldwin.
Grayson Grundhoefer with us, 365 Sports. Grayson, the Houston offense, they're capable of taking a kickback for a touchdown or a punt back for a touchdown on every time if they get kickoffs and punts. But the explosiveness, don't they have like 4 Monterey Baldwins in their offense, even though they struggle in many other ways?
To a certain extent. I'm not sure they're quite as explosive as Monterey Baldwin, but they do have similar guys who kind of provide stability to their receiving core and are tough to defend. You got Joseph Manjack, who was an underrated guy, but he catches a ton of passes for this team. He plays a lot of slot. He's just one of those guys that's always open. And Baylor has had a lot of trouble guarding guys like that, really over the past 2 years, to be honest. So he's definitely one to keep an eye on. And then the guy who's my personal favorite of the receiving core is Matthew Golden. He was the guy who I felt like Baylor should have recruited more heavily coming out of high school. They decided not to. Or else I do think there's probably a pretty high chance that he would have ended up being a Baylor Bear. But when you watch him play, very explosive athlete, good in the return game as well, becoming more and more each year, becoming more of a complete wide receiver. And I think when you see those signs early in a career, like we have with him, that provides a lot of evidence about what he's going to do in the future. So he's definitely going to be the other one in my eyes to watch. I think he's a very, very good player for that offense.
Grayson, thank you very much for your time. Grayson Grundhoefer, SicEm365.com, co-host of the Bearcast with Craig, also football analyst, recruiting analyst for the entire umbrella of what we do.
Yeah, I tried to ask that question